What happens when a wife thinks she is ending a marriage at an airport gate in front of strangers just to chase her old soulmate? How does a boring husband, blamed for everything for years, quietly turn that public humiliation into a legal, methodical escape that she never sees coming? Why does the man everyone called weak walk away with his dignity, his future, and more than she ever planned to lose? Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible stories. My name is Silas Ansel, and I am 34 years old, and most days I still think of myself as an ordinary man who likes quiet mornings, simple routines, and knowing where everything belongs. The morning when I first felt something truly shift did not look special from the outside. I was standing in our small kitchen in the apartment, turning eggs in a pan, listening to the soft hiss, and trying to ignore the cold feeling in my chest. Tessa sat at the table in one of my old shirts, bare legs curled under her, staring down at her phone. The light from the screen lit her face more than the weak sun through the window. She smiled at something I could not see and tilted the phone slightly so the screen faced away from me. When I asked if she wanted toast or just the eggs, she waved a hand without looking up. She said she was not hungry and that she already had plans later. Some simple thing with friends, nothing I needed to worry about. Her tone made it sound like I always worried too much. I put a plate on the counter anyway, just in case, and tried to swallow my questions with my first sip of coffee. On the wall behind her, our old calendar hung slightly crooked. There were dentist visits and school events written in my square handwriting, and then one date in red marker that was not mine. 2 weeks from that day, Tessa had drawn a small red circle and a messy heart next to it, then written only the word trip. I had asked about it once already, and she had told me it was nothing final yet, only ideas. This time, I did not ask again. I just noted it, like I note delivery times at work, and turned down the stove so the eggs would not burn. Mia came into the kitchen, hair messy, clutching the stuffed rabbit that followed her everywhere. She climbed onto a chair and leaned her head on the table. She asked why Mommy was smiling at her phone so early. Tessa laughed and said it was just a friend sending a funny picture, then locked the screen and pushed the phone under a napkin. I watched Mia's eyes follow that small movement, and I knew she felt something was wrong, even if she did not have the words for it. I served Mia a plate, kissed the top of her head, and told her we were going to have a good day at school. I said it slowly, like I was trying to convince myself to. After they both left the kitchen, I stayed a few extra minutes, cleaning the pan, drying the cups, and letting my mind walk through small details. Tessa had started sleeping later in the guest room, saying she needed space from my snoring and from my early alarms. Her phone had gained a new unlock code she said she set by accident. The red circle on the calendar had appeared after a late call I half heard through the bedroom door. None of those things alone looked huge, but together they felt like a pattern. In the bedroom, as I searched for a clean shirt, I saw the guest bed again. The blanket was twisted, and one pillow had a faint smell of a cologne that was not mine, or maybe it was just the mix of her new hair products and my own doubts. When I opened my drawer to grab socks, my own phone lit up on the nightstand. A small reminder appeared on the screen, Metro Lobby 3:10 p.m., marked under a recurring event I had created weeks ago called Meeting, Personal. I did not need to see all the details. I had set that reminder after one long night alone on the balcony when I first decided I should stop pretending everything was fine and at least start quietly organizing my life. At the time, I did not know exactly what I was planning, only that I wanted things written down and backed up. I slid the phone into my pocket and told myself it was only a backup of documents, nothing more. On the way to work, I stopped at the supermarket to grab a few things we needed. That was normal, part of the routine that made me feel safe. Inside, under the bright white lights, I pushed the cart with one hand and checked our list with the other. Bread, milk, apples for Mia, chicken for the weekend. Simple items, nothing dramatic. When I reached the checkout line, Tessa's name flashed on my screen with a new notification. It was a social media update, not a message to me. She had posted one of those short videos again. I opened it with the sound off. She appeared on the screen with perfect hair and a wide smile, using a filter that made everything look golden. She asked her followers to help her choose between staying home with responsibilities or chasing adventure. At the bottom of the screen, a poll showed two options. Keep folding laundry with Mr. Serious or choose the unknown. Many people were voting for the second one. People were adding laughing reactions. One username, something with the word travels in it, kept liking every comment that suggested she run. The cashier noticed me staring at the phone. I quickly locked the screen and slipped it into my pocket. Tessa had not tagged me, but anyone who knew us would understand who Mr. Serious was supposed to be. I forced a polite smile at the cashier and paid, hoping my face did not show the same embarrassment I felt inside. Walking back to the car, I told myself that a video was just a video and that maybe she was only playing. I told myself that again later, standing on our small balcony after work, watching cars move like lines of ants below. The air was cool on my arms as I held my phone and opened our shared cloud album. I had created a folder inside it named Archive A, pretending it was just for old pictures of Mia's school art and birthday cakes. Slowly, without thinking too hard about it, I added screenshots from that morning's poll and some older late-night notifications I had saved. A small message popped up on the screen saying file uploaded successfully. I watched the progress bar fill, then disappear. Inside the apartment, I heard the front door open and close. Tessa's voice floated down the hallway, full of energy, as she talked to her mother on speaker. Carla said Tessa should not feel guilty for wanting more than a man who always talked about routes and delivery times. She said another woman would be happy to have a husband like me, but her tone made it sound like a joke, not a compliment. I stayed on the balcony until their voices moved into the bedroom. When I finally stepped back inside, I put my phone on the counter next to my mug. My mug was on the far right side, hers was on the far left. Even our cups had started to keep their distance. As I wiped the counter, my phone lit up again and vibrated softly against the surface. The call came in from a contact saved with only a small emoji and no name. The note under it read, "Follow up." The sound was muted, only a faint buzz. Tessa walked into the kitchen at that moment and looked at the screen. She asked who kept calling me so often these days and why I kept stepping out onto the balcony. I told her it was about something personal that I needed to handle, nothing she had to worry about. While I spoke, the meeting, personal reminder for later in the week, pulsed quietly at the top of my screen, and I watched her eyes follow it without understanding what it meant. The day after that quiet question in the kitchen, nothing exploded, but everything felt thinner, like a wire pulled tight. I reached the office early, as usual. The open-plan floor was almost empty, just the hum of machines and my own footsteps. I set my lunchbox down, opened my laptop, and let my mind hide for a while in routes, times, and numbers. Work was still the one place where rules were simple and people did not turn feelings into games for an audience. For an hour, I lived only inside delivery windows and truck IDs and pretended not to hear Tessa's laughing voice from the day before. When people started arriving, chairs rolled and conversations grew. I heard my name in that careful tone people use when they are not sure if they are about to help or cause more pain. Joel walked over with his phone in his hand. He said some coworkers had seen Tessa's new story and were talking about it, and he asked if I wanted to see it myself. I told him it was better to look with my own eyes than to guess, so he turned the screen toward me. On the screen, Tessa stood in our hallway between two suitcases. She told her followers that a big choice was coming and that she was tired of a man who loved checklists more than he loved life. Under the clip, she ran another poll about staying in her comfort zone or choosing the unknown with an old flame. The votes for the unknown climbed even as I watched. A travel account with the word red in its name kept liking every brave comment. My stomach felt heavy, but my face stayed still. Joel said he thought it was unfair, but people did strange things when they felt caged. I just asked him to send me the story later. When he walked away, I opened a private window on my computer and visited Tessa's page. I started a short screen recording and moved the cursor slowly so the video, the poll, the usernames, and the date all stayed inside the frame. When I stopped the recording, I saved it, then opened my cloud drive, found the folder named Archive B, and dragged the file inside. A small notice appeared saying the file had been uploaded successfully. I watched the bar move and disappear. It was a small action, but it made me feel a little less helpless. Late in the morning, an email from my manager, Mr. Lang, popped up. He asked me to come to his corner office for a quick word. On the way there, I passed the break room and heard my name mixed with a burst of laughter and the sound of a video, but I did not slow down. Inside his office, he closed the door and folded his hands. He said my private life was mine and he did not want details, but the company name had started to appear under some of my wife's posts. She spoke about gray office life and a dull husband, and people guessed where I worked. He was worried clients might see it and connect us to the story. I listened, feeling shame even though I had not chosen any of this. I told him I understood and that I would ask Tessa not to let the firm be part of her content. I also told him my work would not suffer. He said he trusted me and ended the meeting. Before I went back to my desk, I stopped in the copy room, took a small sticky note, and wrote the date and 2 words, Image Workplace. I folded it and put it into the same notebook that already held short lines about late calls and red circles on calendars. At lunch, I sat with Joel in the break room. Other coworkers watched something on their phones and pretended not to look at me. I felt eyes on my back, heard half-lowered voices. Joel talked about route changes and a football match. I answered as if nothing was wrong because I did not feel like giving anyone more material. When the day ended, I walked out into the supermarket parking lot instead of going straight home. The sky was turning orange. I leaned on the cart return rail and opened my phone. Tessa had posted a new picture, a suitcase handle, and a corner of a boarding pass. Her caption said she was ready to see whether fate still believed in second chances. In a private group chat, she shared a screenshot of a flight search and wrote that maybe she would be brave enough to run away with someone who once knew how to make her heart race. One friend answered that her husband would never see it coming because he was too busy counting boxes. Another wrote that she deserved fun. I took screenshots of the chat and the post, then used my work phone to take a photo of my own screen as well. In the car, I opened my cloud drive and added everything to Archive B. After that, I pushed a small USB drive into my phone with an adapter and copied the same files onto it. The USB was plain, with today's date written on a strip of tape. It sat small and light in my hand, but it felt heavier than my ring. At home, Mia was at the table in her pajamas, drawing planes and buses. She told me that Carla had visited and that Mommy had talked about beaches, sky views, and an old friend with a camera. Mia asked again if I would fly with them. I said that for now Mommy had trips she wanted to take, and that she and I would stay together and keep things steady. She looked at me for a long moment, then nodded and drew a new picture, this time with only 2 stick figures holding hands under a plane. After she fell asleep, the apartment grew quiet, except for Tessa's soft laugh behind the bedroom door as she talked into her headphones. I sat on the balcony with my laptop. The streetlights painted pale lines on the tiles. I opened Archive A and Archive B and saw the growing list of files. In Archive B, I created one more folder and called it Statement. I added a short document with the date and a few facts about the story, the poll, and what Mr. Lang had told me. While I typed, my phone buzzed twice on the small table beside my cup. A notification slid down. Tessa had tagged my account in a new story. The preview showed her beside 2 suitcases, holding one of my printed checklists and laughing. In the caption, she called me Mr. Checklist and asked her followers if they thought I would finally learn to enjoy surprises. A moment later, the work group chat lit up with the same story, shared by someone who said it reminded them of me. As I watched the messages appear, I understood that by the time I walked into the office again, my private life would have become a public joke, and the line between home and work had already started to tear. The night before the flight, I drove Tessa to a rooftop bar where her friends wanted to give her a send-off. The place was all glass and lights, looking over the city like it was a picture instead of a real place where people hurt each other. Mia stayed with Carla that evening, so it was just the 2 of us. Tessa stepped out of the car before I had really parked, already checking her reflection in her phone, smoothing her dress, fixing a strand of hair. She told me I could come up if I wanted, but her tone made it sound like a duty, not an invitation. I followed anyway, still trying to be the man who showed up. On the rooftop, music played just loud enough to make serious talk feel out of place. Her friends sat around a high table with half-empty glasses. When they saw Tessa, they shouted her name and started recording on their phones. One of them called this her fresh start party and said they were finally sending her into the sky she deserved. Someone pointed their camera toward me. I heard them call me the practical one, the man with the spreadsheets, the safe driver. None of those words should have felt like insults, but the way they said them made my face hot. Tessa told them I had driven, like I was a hired ride instead of her husband. She told them I hated surprises, that I had to plan every step and every receipt, and that sometimes she felt like she lived with a human calendar, not a person. The others laughed. One asked if my checklists would survive a few days without her. She put an arm around my shoulders in a way that looked affectionate on camera but felt heavy and mocking to me. She said I would be fine folding laundry while she remembered what it meant to feel alive. I kept my hands at my sides and did not pull away. I did not remind them that I had supported her when she stopped working for months or when she changed hobbies 3 times in 1 year. I did not say that someone had to care whether rent was paid on time. I only said I hoped she would be safe and that Mia would miss her. One of her friends rolled her eyes and said I worried like an old man. My phone vibrated in my pocket. I slid it out and saw a reminder for later that week, still sitting there like a small secret. Bring forms, 9:40 a.m. I had said it during one of my long balcony nights, when I first decided that if this all collapsed, I did not want to walk into it empty-handed. I dismissed the reminder before anyone could see it clearly. When Tessa saw me looking at the screen, she said to her friends that even at a bar, I was probably organizing something. This time, the laugh from the group felt more cruel than nervous. They called for a toast and raised their glasses. I lifted my water, and one friend recorded as Tessa thanked them for reminding her that she still had choices, and did not have to live her whole life with a man who feared missing a line on a paper. I watched the phone angle to catch my face while she said that. I knew that clip would become another small public story they could all share later. I decided I did not want to stay longer than needed. I told her I would be outside when she was ready to leave. She just nodded and turned back to the group, already lost in the glow of her own moment. The next afternoon, I waited in the school pickup line. Cars moved slowly, one after another. The air smelled like dust and asphalt. Mia's class came out in a row. She ran to the car and climbed into the back seat. She talked about her drawings, then grew quiet. She said Carla had shown her pictures on the phone of beaches and city views and a man with a camera who had known Mommy a long time ago. She asked if he was my friend, too. I told her he was someone from Mommy's past and that I did not know him well. Mia asked if he would sit with us on the plane. I said I was not going on this trip. She asked why, if we were still a family. Her voice scratched at something deep in my chest. I chose my words carefully. I said that sometimes adults made choices that were not fair and not kind, and that my job was to stay steady for her, no matter what. She stared at her shoes and then drew an invisible line on the car window with her finger, like she was dividing something she could not name. When we reached home, I packed a small bag with snacks and a toy for her to hold at the airport. Part of me wanted to refuse to drive them there, to say that if Tessa wanted to run with someone else, she could call a cab. But I also knew that if I refused, that moment would become another story about how I punished her and scared Mia. So I chose the path that still let me look at myself in the mirror. I loaded the car, buckled Mia in, and waited for Tessa by the door. She came out dragging one large suitcase and carrying a smaller bag. Her face was full of excitement, not for us, but for the road ahead. She barely glanced at me. On the ride to the airport, she scrolled on her phone, fingers moving quickly. I saw Jonah's name flash once in a notification. Mia asked again if I would come. Tessa said this trip was just for her, that she needed time away from the house and from grown-up responsibilities, and that Daddy would survive a few days alone. She said it like it was a joke, and like our marriage was nothing serious. The airport curb was crowded with cars stopping and moving, horns tapping, luggage wheels rolling over the pavement. Departures boards glowed through the glass doors. I got out and pulled her suitcase from the trunk, setting it beside the curb. Tessa stepped away from the car and looked around, searching for someone. When I asked if Jonah was meeting her here, I kept my voice calm. She turned toward me, eyes sharp, and asked why I always had to ruin moments with questions. She said I was suffocating her, and that this trip was not only a vacation, but a break from the marriage itself. Her words came out louder than I expected. People nearby turned their heads. One woman paused while opening her own suitcase. Tessa raised her arms and said she could not keep living with a man who needed proof and plans for everything. She said she wanted someone who made her feel young again, not someone who reminded her of bills. Every sentence she threw landed on me in front of strangers who knew nothing about us. Then Jonah appeared behind her with a backpack and a camera strap over his chest. He greeted her with easy charm, like this was all simple and natural. She moved toward him with a bright smile that I had not seen in my direction for a long time. To the people around us, I could see how the picture might look. A woman choosing adventure, a man clinging to her suitcase at the curb. Mia tugged my sleeve and asked if Mommy still loved us if she was going away with that man. My throat felt tight, but I told her that love and choices were not always the same thing, and that I loved her fully and would be with her when Mommy was gone. I told Tessa I hoped she would at least send messages to Mia. She rolled her eyes and said I could stop trying to make her feel guilty, because we were basically separated now, and she was just being honest for once. I helped Mia back into the car. As I buckled her belt, my phone inside my jacket vibrated with an unknown number calling. At the same moment, there was a soft beep as I brushed against the screen and saw the small red icon of the recording app still open from earlier in the day when I had forgotten to close it. The counter on the screen showed the last few minutes at the curb had been saved. I watched the unknown call slide to missed, then put the phone away and drove out of the parking lane, leaving Tessa and Jonah walking toward the terminal doors without looking back. I did not make any big choice on the drive home from the airport, at least not in my own mind. I only knew I could not walk back into the same walls and pretend nothing had changed. That night I lay on the couch half awake, listening to the quiet. The apartment felt hollow without Tessa's voice, but it also felt less sharp around the edges. In the morning, I packed a small bag with my own clothes and a few things for Mia, then drove her to school like any normal day. I told her I had to take a short trip for work and that she would stay with Carla for a little while. She held my hand and asked if Mommy would be back when I returned. I said I did not know, but that I would always come back for her. After I dropped her off, I called my brother Marcus and said I needed a place to stay for a bit. I did not give him every detail, only the basic pieces. He said I could come, that he had a spare room and a couch if I preferred. I drove out of the city with the radio off. My mind replayed the airport, the way Tessa had raised her voice, the look on strangers' faces as they saw a man left behind. On the highway, I reached for my phone at a rest stop and opened the recording app. The file from the curb sat there, stamped with time and date. I did not listen. I only moved it into a folder called Statement and watched the progress circle spin and stop. Marcus's house was smaller than our apartment, full of tools and boxes, but it felt solid. He hugged me at the door and said I looked like I had not slept. I told him it had been a rough week. He asked if Tessa and I had fought. I said she had decided to travel with someone from her past and had called it a break from the marriage. He shook his head and said he had never liked how she spoke to me. I did not want to turn this into a list of her faults, so I just said I needed a quiet place to think. He cleared space in his spare room and helped me carry in 2 bags and a cardboard box of files. When he saw the labels on the folders, he raised an eyebrow. I had written home, auto, bank on the spines, and utility on a 4th one, even though it was thicker than the others. He joked that I was still the same man who could not leave anything unordered. I smiled a little and said being ordered had kept bills paid and lights on. He said he was glad I had at least one thing to hold on to. In the evenings, after he went to bed, I sat alone at a small desk against the wall. I opened my laptop and spread the binders out. I slipped printed screenshots into plastic sleeves and wrote dates in the corners. Each page was dull by itself, just a picture of a post, a short caption, a poll, a timestamp. Together they began to show a story that looked different from the one Tessa told online. The smell of printer toner drifted into the room as a small printer on the floor spat out a blank final sheet. I let it lie there, untouched, like a reminder that the story was not complete yet. Mia called me at night from Carla's living room. She held the phone close to her face and asked when I would come back. She said Carla had shown her a new video where Mommy stood on a beach with Jonah and said she was finally free from a heavy life. Mia asked if I had made her life heavy. I felt something tighten in my chest again. I told her that adults sometimes said dramatic things when they felt confused, and that the only thing she needed to believe was that she was loved. I promised I would see her soon. After the call, I saved the notification Carla had sent with the video and dragged it into Archive B. A week later, I agreed to meet them at a park playground halfway between Marcus's town and ours. I wanted to see Mia, not Tessa, but they were a package for now. The sky was clear. Children ran across the grass. Mia rushed to me and wrapped her arms around my waist. Tessa came behind her, sunglasses on, phone in hand. She said I looked surprisingly alive for a man who had vanished. I told her I had not vanished. I had simply stepped back for a while. She said it was the same thing and that everyone thought I had abandoned my family. Mia climbed onto the swing and asked me to push her. As I held the chains and moved her gently, she said Grandma had told her that Daddy left first, and Mommy was just trying to heal. She asked me if it was true. I looked over at Tessa, who pretended to scroll on her phone. I told Mia that I had left the apartment, but not her, and that no one in this story was healing by lying. Mia nodded slowly and asked if we were still a family. I said we were, but that the shape of our family might be changing. She kicked her feet and stared at the sky, as if trying to see that shape above her. Later that month, Carla had a birthday dinner at a family restaurant. She insisted I come. She said it would look bad if I stayed away and that Mia needed to see us all at one table. Marcus offered to drive with me, saying he did not want me walking into that room alone. When we arrived, the long table was already full. Tessa sat close to Carla, showing her pictures on the phone. Most of them were from the trip. Jonah appeared in several, always in the frame but never spoken about directly. When I sat down, the talk grew stiff. Carla smiled too brightly and said everyone was glad I had decided to join them, especially after running off. I told her calmly that I had never run from Mia, only from constant shouting and mocking. Tessa said I was being dramatic and that she had only asked for space. She told the others that she had come back from her trip ready to talk, but I had disappeared to my brother's house without warning. I reminded her, still in an even tone, that at the airport she had said we were basically separated and that this trip was a break from the marriage. Some eyes around the table shifted. During the meal, Leon came to sit beside me. He kept his voice low and said some of the dates in Tessa's online stories did not fit her version. He said he was not taking sides, but he thought I should protect myself. I thanked him and said I was already keeping track of things. In my pocket, my phone buzzed once. It was a cloud notification saying file uploaded successfully for a batch of prints I had backed up earlier that day. I muted it before anyone asked. When the cake came out, everyone sang. Mia sat between us, trying to smile. As the noise settled, she picked up Carla's phone from the table and opened a picture without meaning to. It was one of Tessa and Jonah on a balcony somewhere, his arm around her waist. Mia frowned and held up the screen. In a clear, simple voice that carried down the table, she asked why Mommy was hugging a man who was not Daddy and calling him her favorite person. The clink of cutlery stopped. Carla's hand froze around her fork. Tessa reached for the phone too fast and told Mia not to play with other people's things. Some cousins stared at me, waiting to see if I would shout or make a scene. My heart beat hard against my ribs, but I kept my voice steady. I told Mia that sometimes adults behaved in ways that did not match their promises, and that this was why I had been staying somewhere else. Her eyes filled with confusion and hurt. In that moment, as the table sat in heavy silence, I understood that I could not keep protecting Tessa's story for the sake of keeping peace. On the drive back to Marcus's house later that night, I opened my phone and circled a date on a digital calendar, the same date I had already marked on a paper one in his kitchen. I did not label it with details, only with a simple word that made sense only to me, proper. The night I circled that date on Marcus's digital calendar, something inside me settled instead of snapping. I did not feel rage or the need to get even in a loud way. I only felt a tired clarity, the kind that comes when you finally stop trying to hold up both sides of a wall by yourself. I knew I could not force Tessa to be faithful or truthful, and I knew I could not keep letting Mia grow up inside a story that was being twisted in public. All I could do was decide how I would respond and make sure that response did not come from impulse, but from facts. A few days later, Carla insisted that Tessa and I both attend a children's art event at the community center where Mia's class was showing their projects. The hall was filled with drawings taped to boards, paper suns, and cardboard houses. Parents walked around with paper cups of coffee, pretending everything in their lives was soft and normal. I stood near Mia's painting, which showed a bus and two stick figures holding hands under it. She explained that it was supposed to be a trip, but that one person had to stay behind to keep the house safe. She did not say which one was which. Tessa arrived in a bright dress, phone in hand again. She went from parent to parent, saying she was glad she could still show up for events, even though her husband had decided to run away to his brother's place instead of facing problems. She told one mother that she had come back from a simple trip, ready to talk, and found an empty bed. She said she was worried about my mental health, that I was unstable, that I had abandoned them, and might not even show up for the art show. The other woman looked at me with quiet judgment, like she was already picking sides. I did not correct Tessa in front of that mother. I just bent down to Mia's level and asked which drawing she wanted to show me next. Later, when Tessa moved on, I stepped into a quieter side hall near the restrooms. My phone buzzed. It was a message from Leon. He had sent screenshots from one of Tessa's group chats. In it, she bragged about how dramatic it had been to dump him at the airport and watch him walk away like a sad movie character. She wrote that she was technically the abandoned one now because he had vanished to his brother's cave and left her to be the victim. Her friends answered with laughing emojis and told her she deserved awards for surviving such a sensitive man. I stared at the screenshots for a long moment, then saved them to my gallery. From there, I moved them into Archive B. When the upload finished, my phone flashed a small cloud message saying the files had been synced. I took one more step and copied them onto the same plain USB drive, now updated with a new date strip on its side. I slid the drive into my wallet behind my identification, so it would stay close. That night in Marcus's small office corner, I opened the binders again. Under the label Home, I placed notes about the apartment lease, the furniture, and utilities. Under Auto, I stored copies of car titles and insurance. Under Bank, I kept statements showing deposits and withdrawals, including charges Tessa had made for flights and hotels. The binder labeled Utilities was thicker than any bill stack really required. Inside it, in plastic sleeves, were printed screenshots of polls, posts, group chats, and a short typed document clipped to a simple board that showed only one word at the top: statement. In that document, I listed dates, times, and simple facts about what had happened without adding insults. The printer hummed as it finished another set of pages, then, as if it needed to rest, pushed out one last blank sheet and stopped. The smell of toner hung in the room. I left the blank page on the tray and turned off the light, letting the binders sit on the desk in 3 neat rows. A few days later, I waited in the school pickup line again. Cars inched forward, parents looked at their phones. When Mia climbed into the car, she seemed tired. Tessa appeared at my window a moment later, leaning down with the kind of smile she used when she wanted bystanders to think everything was normal. She said loudly that she was glad I had finally decided to show my face and that it would be nice if I stopped making her look like a single mother while I hid in another city. She added that some people thought I had lost my mind. I let her words hang in the air before I answered. I told her, in a level tone, that I had not hidden from anything and that I had simply removed myself from constant shouting and mocking. I said our living arrangements, childcare schedule, and shared responsibilities needed to be clear, written down, and protected, and that this would be settled in a proper way. Oh, I did not raise my voice. I did not threaten. I just stated my intention. She laughed and said I was bluffing, that I was too weak to act, and that I would crawl back once the drama scared me enough. A few other parents looked away, pretending they had not heard. That evening in Marcus's kitchen, we sat with mugs of tea while the clock ticked on the wall. He said he could see I was doing something more than just hiding. He worried that this path would turn into a war that would hurt Mia most of all. I told him I did not want a war, only boundaries, and that when someone kept lying loudly, the quiet person had to at least make sure there was a record. I added that whatever I did next would be done properly, through the channels that existed for this kind of thing, and that I would not raise my hands or shout in public no matter how much I was pushed. Later, in the spare room, I placed a single USB stick on the desk beside a sealed envelope with no markings on the outside. On my phone, I opened the calendar and checked the date I had circled, the one labeled Only Proper. I set a reminder for that morning at 9 o'clock under the recurring event meeting, personal, and added a smaller note that said simply, Courtyard 1105. The screen reflected my face in the dim light. Before I slept, I created a new contact in my phone using only a small-scale emoji as the name. I linked it to a number I had already written in my notebook under the word follow-up. Then I turned the phone to silent and set it on the far side of the room. The next morning, when I picked it up again, a notification from that contact waited on the lock screen, showing that one short message had arrived in the night and been marked as read on another device. Marcus met me in the hallway as I was pulling on my jacket. He asked where I was going and if I needed company. I told him there was one more thing I had to finalize, and that it was better if I did it alone. I slipped the USB into my pocket, felt its small weight, and checked that the sealed envelope was inside my bag. As I stepped out of the door, my phone buzzed softly with the meeting. Personal alert, the little reminder that the day I had circled for so long had finally arrived. The bus terminal concourse smelled like coffee and wet pavement. Voices echoed off the high ceiling as people rolled suitcases across the tiles and watched the arrival board flicker from one city name to another. I stood near the exit from the long-distance platforms with my back against a pillar, hands in my pockets. The small folder in my bag felt heavier than it really was. In my phone, the meeting, personal reminder from that morning, sat already checked off, and another one glowed quietly under it, labeled Courtyard 1105. I had already been to the courtyard. The real part was here. A man in a plain jacket stood a few steps away, pretending to study a newspaper. I knew his role, but no one else in the crowd did. We had agreed on the time, the place, and the names. It all felt oddly simple after months of mess. Around us, life moved normally. A little boy cried over a dropped snack. A woman argued softly with a driver on the phone. No one knew that this busy space was about to become the place where my marriage turned into a case number. The bus from the coastal route pulled in with a hiss. People started coming through the sliding doors, blinking at the indoor light. I saw Tessa before she saw me. She walked with quick, confident steps, a new suitcase behind her and her phone in her hand. Jonah followed, carrying a backpack and his camera. Carla hurried a few paces behind them with a gift bag for Mia, even though Mia was at Marcus's house and nowhere near this terminal. Tessa looked sunburned and pleased with herself, like she had stepped straight out of one of her own videos. When her eyes finally landed on me, she stopped for a second. Then her chin lifted. She asked in an annoyed voice why I was there, and she told me I had no right to ambush her after leaving her alone for weeks. I kept my tone level. I told her I had not abandoned anyone, and that today was about putting our situation into clear, written terms so that everyone, especially Mia, would know where they stood. I did not raise my voice. I did not move toward her. I just nodded once toward the man with the newspaper. He folded the paper, stepped forward, and addressed her by her full name in a calm voice. He said he had documents for her and confirmed her identity. Then he handed over the large envelope. She took it without understanding, still focused on me, but when she looked down and saw the first page through the clear front sheet, the lines in her face changed. The heading at the top read Petition for Dissolution of Marriage. Below that were other headings: Temporary Orders for Use and Possession of Marital Residence, Proposed Temporary Conservatorship and Custody Schedule for Minor Child, and attached exhibit lists for social media posts and recorded statements. Carla moved closer and asked what she was holding. Tessa said it had to be a mistake, that I was trying to punish her. She said I was taking things too far over a simple trip. I answered that nothing in those pages came from my imagination. I said they were built from her own public posts, her own words at the airport, and the records of where Mia had been and with whom. I added that I was not asking for anything beyond a clean division, a safe home for our daughter, and a set of rules we both had to follow. Jonah looked down when he heard his name mentioned in one of the paragraphs Tessa read out loud. The petition described him only as a third party who had traveled and stayed with her while she claimed to be abandoned. It stated that any regular contact between him and Mia would need to be reviewed under temporary orders. His shoulders tightened. He told Tessa quietly that he did not want to be dragged through a court process, and that this was not what he thought would happen. He picked up his backpack and drifted toward the exit, leaving her standing with Carla and the envelope. Carla tried to say that I was overreacting and that couples survived affairs, but her voice shook as she read one of the dates that proved Tessa had not come back ready to fix things the way she had claimed. Leon stood a few meters away, watching with a pale face, and did not step in to defend his sister. A few travelers slowed their steps, sensing tension, but there was no shouting, no pushing, no scene for them to record. There were only pages, names, dates, and the sound of the terminal loudspeaker calling out another arrival. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I took it out and saw a new email subject line appear on the lock screen. Filing confirmation with a case number after it. The sender was the same contact I had saved with a small-scale emoji. That was the last piece. I locked the screen again and slid the phone away. I told Tessa, in the same even voice I had used all along, that my part now was to follow whatever the court decided, to keep a stable space for Mia, and to stop living inside stories where I played the villain by default. Then I turned toward the exit doors. The automatic glass panels opened with a soft hiss as I walked through and closed again behind me. On one side of the glass, Tessa stood in the middle of the concourse with the petition and temporary orders in her hands, finally faced with the full weight of her own choices. On the other side, I stepped into the cool air of the street, feeling the noise of the buses fade behind me as the doors sealed the space between us.